Welcome to the main event. Have you ever wanted to go back in time and check out every single WWF main event from 1995 until now? Of course you have, because you're a wrestling fan. And even if you haven't, I bet right now you're still thinking to yourself, you know what, Conman? I do want to go back in time and check out every single main event from 1995 until now. Well, I got you covered, because this series is called The Main Event, and how it's going to work is we're going to go back to In Your House in May of 1995, the very first WWF monthly pay-per-view event, and beginning our collective journey through every single pay-per-view main event until present day. And along the way, we will review, discuss, and rank all the matches, and by the end, together, we're gonna know what the greatest main event of all time is. And if at any point you find yourself wishing you could watch my reaction to these matches, then be sure to head over to Patreon, as I'm uploading my reaction to every single one of these matches we talk about. So you can expect to see this series every single Friday, so make sure you leave a like on this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and turn those notifications on so you never miss another upload. Now, it's time for the main event. Okay, so back in 1995, WWF decided it was time to expand their pay-per-view model. They were done with just advertising WrestleManias, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, King of the Rings, and other events like that. They wanted to air a single pay-per-view every single month, and that is how In Your House was born. But in order to do this, they did need to drop the price in order for it to be more affordable, and this turned into a shortened pay-per-view as a result. The In Your House pay-per-views, at least this first one, only ran for an hour and 40 minutes, and it cost only $14.95 at the time, which I know kind of sounds crazy today with all the subscription prices and everything, but back then that would have been a bargain to get a WWF pay-per-view for less than $15. Now the matches looked like this. We had Bret Hart defeating Hakushi, who I hadn't heard of before this pay-per-view. I still don't really know much about him. There was Razor Ramon defeating Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie, so the Road Dogg was on this show in a 2-on-1 handicap match. Mabel defeated Adam Bomb in a King of the Ring qualifying match, and that was under 2 minutes as well. Owen Hart and Yokozuna defeated the Smokin' Guns, which was Billy Gunn and Bart Gunn, to retain the WWF Tag Team Championships. Jerry Lawler defeated Bret Hart in his second match of the night, which is kind of wild to say, but then that brings us to our main event, Diesel versus Psycho Sid. Now, before we break it down, I think it's important to understand how did we get to this match. So the story goes that it was supposed to be Shawn Michaels versus Diesel in a rematch from WrestleMania 11, but along the way, Shawn told his then bodyguard Psycho Sid that his services were no longer required. This led to Sid turning on Shawn Michaels by powerbombing him not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. And while Diesel did eventually come down to make the save for Shawn, Shawn was legitimately hurt and he would be sidelined for 6 weeks as a result. So just like that, the main event of the first ever In Your House pay-per-view was gone and we needed to find a replacement. That brings us to how this match actually happened, as it was announced that Sid would take on Diesel for the WWF Championship. The match itself was really nothing special, if I'm being honest with you. More so just visually impressive seeing two guys that big standing across the ring from each other. Now, don't get me wrong, I know I gotta watch this through the scope of 1995 and not judge based on just crowd reactions, but it does seem as if this crowd was really indifferent to this being the main event. But putting that aside, let's focus on what happened between the two big men. We started the match with Diesel getting the upper hand, actually destroying Sid, until the Psycho rolled out of the ring to regroup. Now, this wouldn't last long though, as Diesel did hit a double axe handle to the floor before bringing Sid back inside the ring. Sid would continue to try to escape Diesel, but to no avail. That was until Ted DiBiase, the manager of Sid Vicious at the time, Psycho Sid, caused a distraction and allowed Sid to gain the upper hand in this matchup. This is where the match slowed down heavily. It was actually quite good in that opening minute and a half, but after there, it was really all downhill. And this is not me being a negative Nancy or anything like that, but it really was a slow match. Sid would start to pick apart Diesel slowly for essentially the rest of this match. And every time Diesel would get a bit of offense in, he would instantly be put back down into the mat. It really seemed like it was hopeless for Diesel. And this was the part that I struggled to get through right here. Sid Vicious would sit down in the camel clutch and sink all the way into it for about 5 minutes of this match. And I'm not talking spread out throughout the match. I'm talking about 3 minutes in a row and then 2 minutes in a row. Talk about a rest hold, man.
This is such good shit.
Eventually, Diesel does get out of it, only to be put back down with a massive chokeslam, followed by a brutal powerbomb. Like, it really didn't look good for the champion, and it seemed like we were going to get a new champion as a result. But Sid really isn't the smartest tool in the shed, and he took his sweet time getting down to the cover, which really didn't resonate with me at all. Like, where was your hustle? Where was your want to win the championship? But this time that he took allowed Diesel to kick out and begin to fire up. Now, this is where the crowd really came alive for the match because they were very quiet for most of it. A snake eyes from Diesel followed by a big boot and a massive power bomb should have been the end of the match, but in classic 1995 fashion, yep, you guessed it, the main event ended in a DQ. Imagine that, a pay-per-view in 1995 ending in a DQ. Oh man. Ted DiBiase came into the ring along with Tatanka to break up the pinfall, and that's where they began to beat up Big Daddy Cool, but he did have some help in the form of Bam Bam Bigelow, who came out to make the save. Bam Bam and Diesel stood tall here at the end of the show, and that's really it. There's not a lot to talk about with this match. It was a one-sided matchup for Sid Vicious, where the babyface just came back and got the dub near the end. But all in all, for a match that was never supposed to be the main event, it was okay, I guess. But let's call a spade, all right? This was about as bland and basic of a main event matchup as you could get. Very safe, nothing outside of the box, and a lot of rest holds with the submissions. And while I wish we were able to give this first match of the main event series a very strong rating, like, I gotta be honest with all of you, it's not gonna be a good one. So if you take a look right here, this is going to be our grading tool for the entire main event series, and we'll find out what the greatest main event of all time is. We have the S tier, the A tier, the B tier, C, D, E, and F tier right here. And of course, we're going to have all the matchups, and we'll decide where it is they go. Now, for me, look, I think there's going to be a lot more matches that are far better than this, okay? Like, it wasn't a horrendous main event by any means, but I certainly won't be going out of my way to watch this again in the future. So after a little back and forth, you know, I don't think it's a fail because, like, look, the match was solid enough. It did its job, and the fans did come alive near the end, and they worked a new angle into the end. So not an F. I don't think it deserves an E either. Like, to be perfectly honest, I think you'd really have to have just a passable matchup in order to get to an E. For me, it's somewhere here between C and D, and I am starting to think that this is going to be closer to a D tier of a matchup than a C tier. Now, the reason I say that is because this right here feels like you're on the verge of it becoming something, you know, really enjoyable. I would say like a lot of Raw and SmackDown main events through the years would belong in here, but this felt like just a step down compared to some of those matchups. So for me, our very first one is going in the D tier. And look, I think a D is a very solid rating to start things off. It's not too unfair. We're not saying it's the worst match of all time, but like, I feel there's so many better matches that we're going to come across. Now, if you'd like to watch my full reaction to this match, be sure to head over onto Patreon and check out all the extra content that I have over there for you. You'll also be able to vote on the grade of future matchups. So you'll literally be able to make your voice heard and kind of influence my decision as well as to where we are ranking some of these matches. So you'll have the chance to grade the future matches, have your comments be featured here on YouTube during the series, and so much more. So if that interests you, be sure to go check the link out in the description below. Yeah, this wasn't the strongest of matchups to start off with here, but it really can only go up, right? The series is going to air every single Friday on this channel, so be sure to leave a like on this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and turn those notifications on. Next up is the King of the Ring 1995 main event between Diesel and Bam Bam Bigelow versus Tatanka and Psycho Sid. Oh boy. But thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you guys next time for the main event.